Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language, and I will not go to my room. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is a Friday the 13th edition. Today, we go to 3D. It's Friday the 13th, part 3D? I don't know. My name is Michael Schatz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man ready to don the mask for the first time, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
No way, I'm pregnant, remember?
I gotta tell you, I thought that was just a joke that she was saying.
It would make more sense if it was.
And then I was watching the Crystal Lake, the Camp Crystal Lake Memories.
Mm-hmm.
And then to learn that she was actually pregnant.
Yeah.
I thought, holy fucking shit. I was unawares.
I think the screenwriters put that line of dialogue in just to remind themselves that she was pregnant. So when they reread the script, because it never comes up again in the movie.
Never. Yeah.
And
it's hysterical.
It's really the last thing you want to gloss over in a movie
right.
where someone's life is in danger. Surely
because
it raises the stakes enormously, but not if it's never referenced.
Right. Because that's what they referenced in the behind the scenes stuff, was how tragic the character was because she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh wait, I'm sorry, she was actually pregnant?
Yeah.
She kind of said it like it was a joke.
Well, exactly, and that's why I think that line's there because it's said twice, it can't be a joke.
Right.
But it's never referenced again, not even in the scene where they have sex in a hammock. And they talk about, they look as if they're having sex for the first time, but factually that's not true.
There's
because
no
she's
way.
Pregnant. It's not an Anakin situation.
It would have been kind of funny if right before they start having sex, one of them was, I don't know, can we have sex in a hammock? Is that good for the baby?
Right, exactly. That should be should be the conversation, not how do you have sex in a hammock.
Right.
Well, you think about when you did it to get her pregnant. Start with that.
You've done it once, at least.
And that that opens a whole can of worms, because it's not discussed whether this guy is the father either.
That's true. You're right.
So I don't really understand why it's in there, because all the potential reasons for it being there are not followed up on.
Ever. Yeah, they never talk about it again.
It doesn't raise the stakes. It's not a point of dramatic conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Or danger. So I think, it's just, it's a really strange choice that never pays off.
Yeah, I can't deny that. And yet, we both called this movie good. I think both of us are barely calling it good.
I said before we started recording, we've really got our work cut out for us today.
I know, right?
Said this was good.
Because earlier today, I thought to myself, did I call that movie good? I might have to do some fast talking to...
How can you hate a movie where the D in the title stands both for dimension and disco?
I know. Oh,
simultaneously.
Man. Well, hang on. We'll get to the credits in a moment. But ladies and gentlemen, we're talking Friday the 13th, part 3. As just discussed, Tom and I have both called this movie good, but it has 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I'll say this.
Is that higher or lower than Terminator Salvation?
Lower, I think.
You think it's lower?
Yeah, wasn't that in the teens or something?
No, it was definitely single figures, but I think you might be right. I think it's potentially lower than that. And I mean that's ridiculous. There's a lot to like about this movie.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
You know, it's I again, you know, we're gonna encounter this every time we do one of these movies because because of the genre it's in and because of the type of film it is.
Hmm.
We, you know, that you automatically take away like 25% from whatever the score should be,
Right, exactly, yeah.
and then you
Especially
just
if
keep
you're dealing with Siskel or Ebert.
yeah, and then you just keep subtracting percentages after that. So it's like it's an automatic 25% disqualification for it being a horror
I'll
sequel.
I'll tell you who did like this movie: audiences. Because on a
Yeah,
budget of $2.3 million, 9.4 opening weekend, and in the USA and in the world, $36.6 million. It seemed to me that, if you look at the behind the scenes stuff and kind of look at what people were saying at the time, not reviewers, uh, people were
everyone
ready
who's
for
not a
3D.
reviewer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I
this was
think
the
people
this
were.
was
I think they
yeah.
were really excited about this movie being in 3D because
It was the
we
crest of
kind
the
of gave some
3D
play to
wave,
this. Yeah, right.
and it was a small window. Literally, this
Oh
3D
yeah.
boom that we're in the middle, they're right at the peak of, goes from 81 to 83. Not
Hmm.
a year before, not a year after. So, you know, you got to make
So
hay
right.
while the sun shine, and this is
Yeah,
this is
right.
right in the meaty part of the curve. This is the bell of the bell curve.
And you know what's funny? I mean, we talked about this in the ranking episode. I don't like 3D.
No,
It's a distraction, and generally just does not lead to good filmmaking. But
it's limited. I
and
think.
there's
Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's
right.
just it's severely limit. You're severely limiting the kind of film you can make,
Yeah,
and I think that
right.
means that it's wrong to try and shape an entire industry around it, which is what we've done like three times in the history of
Since
cinema. Yeah. So
right.
there's the wave in the 50s, then the wave of the early 80s, and then of course the wave of the sort of late aughts, I guess, is about when
Mhm.
uh and then
Even
that's
later, I mean, into the
and it's lasted longer than
2012, and it's
it's
still
last yeah.
around.
It's lasted longer than any of the previous two fads, but there's still a
Right.
sense that it sort of became redundant very quickly, which is
Hmm.
the lesson that we never seem to learn about 3D.
Ever.
No.
But having said that, I think I talked about this in the ranking episode. I don't need apples and oranges in 3D, rats on sticks, and plenty of poles in this movie. But if
Well,
if
there's your
if I
limitations, right? If you're already reusing poles
right,
halfway
yeah,
into your movie, there's only certain number of things you can do with 3D.
you can do
You've
after,
you've
right?
you've proved well. You've proved your own point at that. You know, if you're going, what else can we do? Have we done the pole? Yeah, we did a pole. Throw in another
Well, let's
pole.
put another pole in. People like poles. But a lot
And
of it I would have been really into, the snake jumping out and
yeah,
Jason
if they'd have been,
himself kind of, back at that time, I would have been all about that. I'm
and I think
sure.
they could have been more judicious and worked harder on certain effects that were related that amplified the horror because
Right.
there's the yo-yos and the
Hmm.
juggling and the poles. They got nothing to do with horror. That's the weird thing. Is like only about
Yeah,
ten
give me more
percent.
eyes popping out.
Exactly,
That would
about
have been some good shit.
10% of the 3D effects are sort of to exacerbate the horror, and the rest is just
Hmm.
what can we put close to the camera,
Yeah.
basically. So it's a misuse of the form
And
And
you're dropping the
because
ball completely if you don't get a gush of blood coming out. I don't think that's in there, is it?
no, and again, the other problem is because you're retroactively watching it in 2D.
Yeah.
For each of the effects, you're also evaluating whether it translates into 2D or not. And it's clearly something that only works in 3D, it's very obvious because it looks like the blocking has gone wrong. It looks like an outtake because it was only supposed to read in 3D. So there are moments like that. There's lots of wasted opportunities. But when 3D is used well, it will always stand up in a 2D movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sign that you're using 3D well if it crosses over into a 2D movie without any loss. Hitchcock managed it with Dial M for Murder. One or
Sure.
two moments of this movie do it. Jaws 3D has a couple of moments that do it as well.
Yeah, Spear.
So it is. So
Which
it is
this movie
possible.
does too.
And a year before, so they scooped him.
I always thought that Jaws probably borrowed.
Oh, I think so. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, we gushed over that harpoon
Yeah.
moment, but clearly they got it from here, or they must have seen it here and reenacted it. But I feel the same about this. I'm like, wow, that really works in 2D.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't say that for most of the effects here.
Well, let me ask you this off the top. This movie is also directed by Steve Miner, who directed the previous movie, and
It is.
we gushed quite a bit about Steve Miner in that movie. Do you think he has the same game in this movie?
No.
Me neither. And I can't
Sometimes, yeah.
I can't reconcile that in my brain. Like, why? It's like he took a movie off.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can't help but his innate command of the camera. This is his second movie.
There's
His
some of
innate
that.
command of the camera is still there. I think a lot of the kind of time that we waste on 3D is helped by his ability to do focus shifts in camera.
Mm-hmm.
That without that, a lot of those 3D effects wouldn't even be watchable. So there's definitely traces of the work he did in the last movie, but a lot of the transcendent stuff and the interest. Well, I guess part of it is like, again, and behind the scenes content speaks to this as well, that they were putting all their effort into trying to get the 3D right.
Yeah.
And if you're if you're directing the movie, then all your attention is going to be paid on that. So you don't have time for these kind of this kind of for kind of honing the visual language of the rest of the film, the way that we saw with Part 2.
Yeah,
So
and that, I mean, that's
how I
apparent.
reconcile it. Is that his project? He's trying to make the 3D look as good as possible, and just competently direct the rest of the movie. That's kind of all that matters here. That it comes, and it does come. It's a very competently made movie, but
Yeah.
his creative.
But it
energy,
comes
I should
across
say.
instead. We talked about what a paint by numbers it feels like,
Yeah.
and it feels like that more than innovative, which the last movie felt like.
But his creative energy, I think, is being spent on
No, yeah, you're
building a visual language of 3D cinema. And
Well, and as you and I both
you know-
know, they set up their first shot and everything fell down.
Yeah.
So that kind of
Right.
tells the story of where their focus was for the movie itself.
And in an alternate reality where 3D becomes a mainstream norm, we might look at this movie very differently.
Mm-hmm.
But as it stands, it's just a kind of just a window into a period of history which seems misguided in retrospect.
Yeah.
But we keep we keep repeating the mistakes of film history, so joke's on us.
Do you have anything to say credits before we? I noticed that we got Jason Inc. in this front credits.
Well, before
As a
before the
production company.
yeah, so it's interesting given what we've just been saying about Steve Miner, who is continuing here as director. We noted that in the previous film, it began with a Steve Miner film. This time, the producers in the studio
Right.
get that
Yeah.
title
Right.
credit. So you've got the same director, but now he's been relegated to third in the billing, which again I think again just shows the shift of priorities here. That the last film was really a director's movie, and this is more of a kind of committee
Yeah.
feel to it.
Right.
It's producers, it's your 3D the 3D supervisor gets a very high billing. So he's almost kind of on a par with the director here. So I think that opening billing says it all about that author credit says it all about how the priorities of authorship have shifted.
Have shifted. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we go into having found a story way around just having a chunk of the last film's ending in the last.
Yeah,
movie.
we get a good 6 minutes of the last movie.
Now we're just like starting about 6 minutes before the end of the last movie, and that's how this movie begins. So we're going back to basics.
Yeah, pretty much so we can just get this movie to 92 minutes. It's a real cheap way to get this movie to 92 minutes.
That was my first thought as well, because I know the first thing I noticed watching these movies back to back that this movie's 10 minutes longer than Friday the 13th Part 2. And, I immediately had the cynical thought of, is it 10 minutes longer because it has 10 minutes of the last film in it?
Of the last movie?
You know what? I don't think it's a full 10 minutes, but that's not entirely untrue.
Nope.
It takes up a good 5-6 minutes, as you say, which means that, half of that extended running time is just the last movie. And it's just so fascinating because it wants to give the impression that it's a serialized story. But of course, the first thing we do is immediately dispense with any of the surviving characters.
Yeah, right.
So the film kind of wants to have it both ways. It wants continuity without having any continuous characters.
Right.
Without any,
sure.
legacy characters, except Jason. And it's very clear when the footage of the last movie ends, because there's the improved quality of film stock when you first see when you get that first shot of Jason on the ground. You're like, okay, so now the movie's begun because they've been using second generation footage.
Right.
That has degraded, and now this is the new film stock coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the other thing that it does is it relitigates the ending of the last film. We get it from a different perspective, which is that. Well, two things really. One, that we get a sense of where the dream sequence at the end of the last movie began.
Yeah, right.
Because where the movie recaps up to, the movie
stops at right.
They're implicitly telling us everything after this is a dream, right? That's kind of what it's implicitly telling us. So it's almost like resolving the kind of dream cliffhanger of the last movie, which the previous movie never did for the first movie. So this movie
something new.
Something new, and it's like this movie wants to be clear about what it's doing in a way that the last movie necessarily didn't.
Right.
It wants us to know what's real in this world and what's not. And and then the other part is we're kind of doing what all sequels do when they recap footage, is we either add in new shots that tell a different story than the one we saw in the last movie
that we know.
Or they re-edit it, and I guess this movie does that to a certain extent. They re-edit it so it tells us what we should think about the ending, and how we should reconsider it based on how much it fits this movie.
Right. Yeah.
So it's less interesting conceptually as the last movie, and less ambiguous and complex and all those things that we admired about the last film. But it is still
right. Yeah.
It's still a kind of remediation of what we've seen, and again, it's setting
It's
this
still
movie,
it's still in it. Yeah, we're going a more pure imbas.
yeah, exactly. It's more
Really.
conventional. External reality matters a lot more in this movie. Everything has to be
Hmm.
clearer. The boundaries between dream and reality have to be more firmly established. Again, everything's becoming concretized. There's not room for subtlety or nuance in this particular telling of the Friday the 13th story.
Yeah.
As the diner owners we're about to meet will handily
Firmly attest
symbolize.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but before that, of course, we have these legitimately amazing title credits.
Block title.
It's, I mean, the break, the sort of the, I don't know what you call it, because it's not a cut. The transition, I suppose, from Mrs. Voorhees' head to a disco version of the Friday 13th theme,
Fantastic.
and a kind of a graphic representation of the 3D look with a sort of a like a kind of Batman style Mrs. Voorhees' head coming towards the screen.
Well,
Like
what I like the most about it,
la.
what I like the most about the title is it's in 3D and it comes out, and then it comes out, and after a pause, it comes out a little further.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
They're telling you that, like, just in the title, they're telling you what they care about.
Yeah, exactly. They're getting their priorities straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the contradiction at the heart of the credits, which is that this is boom time for 3D for the 3D craze, but disco's
Right.
been over for a good 5 years.
That's the
So
funniest part about
we're
it.
riding the
I
crest
just
of one wave, and
and
the other wave has
and we
dissipated into the beach.
it's like so far behind you is
Yeah.
the best part of it.
Yeah.
The when that disco music came, I remember the first time I watched this movie, because I mean it was long after it came out,
Mm.
and I had to immediately run back and look at credits to see what year it came out,
Yeah.
because I knew the first movie was 80, so I thought this is a weird choice, right?
Yeah, it would have
What's
seemed
happening?
anachronistic in the original movie. Never mind
Right.
the
Yeah.
third movie, which albeit is only 2 years later, but still.
But I think I think it is part of the charm of this particular movie. I mean,
It's an esoteric choice, yeah.
yeah, you don't hear a lot of people say, "Man, I really hate that
No.
disco music." We
No,
all just fucking
yeah.
love it.
We all love it, and I think part of the fun is that it's completely esoteric. Harry Manfredi. You get a sense of Harry Manfredi not understanding that disco is outdated, and that adds to the fun of it. I think
Yeah, totally.
that he picks something that almost picks a kind of genre of music almost at random
Right.
to remix the Jason theme,
So good.
and it works because it doesn't work, right? There's a
Yeah,
weird
exactly. Yes, right.
it's such an it's like it's almost challenging in the way it challenges your conventions about kind of what to expect.
It's a direct confrontation
Yeah, exactly.
with the audience, You have to either get on board now or get the fuck out.
Yeah. Also, speaking about setting out your stall, is the smoke in this opening title sequence, is this the kind of 3D effect that would look amazing were it not in 2D? Because it just looks like a community theater production to me.
Yeah, right.
Do you think that smoke really, really sang in 3D? Because it's very stagey.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so.
It looks like, as a bunch of teenagers are going to come out and start doing Grease.
Yeah.
But the first once the title sequence over, the first shot proper of the movie,
That crane
Isn't-
shot.
it's amazing. I mean, it's Steve
It's so
Miner at his
good.
best. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no matter how cheesy things get, and they get very cheesy very quickly in this movie,
Mhm.
the command of the camera is undeniable.
Yeah.
You are still to some extent in safe hands. It's just that those hands are have got other responsibilities.
They're worried about other things.
Yeah, they got nothing. They don't care. They don't care about the the 2D camera anymore.
Right, but I guess I guess it's a good thing that he doesn't drop what he can do well completely.
I agree, and the best moments of this movie is where his abilities with the camera feed into the 3D rather than working against it.
Yeah.
And in this scene, we get the first of at
The
least
first of
two
the many polls.
The first of the polls. Which the first time you see it, I think it still reads in 2D, and it's a nice jolt for the audience because we're
they kind of announced their presence early, like we're gonna ease you into this. Just here's a little something for you.
Yeah, so it kind of works as a sort of like a fake out almost. You're expecting something,
but it also it kind of, this whole scene reminds me and feels like the beginning of a Halloween 2 with
it is
Michael. He's
going
into this.
Do you know why it reminds
the
you of
side
that?
neighbors' houses?
It's identical.
It's totally the same. So
yeah, the arguing. Well, you can list the tropes. The arguing couple.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the wife in Halloween 2 doesn't have rollers in her hair, it feels like she has rollers in her hair.
Yeah,
this one
right.
certainly does. Watching the TV news,
same pink bathrobe though, I think.
Yeah. Watching the reports of the killings on the TV news, picking up directly in the aftermath.
By the way, that news reporter
movie.
is Steve Miner.
It is indeed. And they pick up directly from the end of the last movie.
Right, that's the big
Halloween
thing is
did.
that they really start right at the exact moment that one ends, which means, by the way, that this is Saturday the 14th, but I suppose they don't care.
No, I mean it's sort of like yeah, it's interesting. I guess if they'd made the first sequel Saturday the 14th, that would have kind of they could have established it there, but they can't really do that now. They have to keep it Friday the 13th.
No, yeah.
Part 3.
But I'm not mad at it. That's fine. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I know, and it's and Friday the 13th. By this point is just the marquee. It's meaningless.
Right.
And
Harold is eating himself out of house and home in that store of his. Like, how can that store remain a profitable business with all the shit he's eating and drinking?
Yeah, so when the couple they're watching the news footage on TV, what they're watching is the rest of the ending of the last movie. So
yeah, right.
Because they see Ginny being taken away on the stretcher, and I think again that's a slightly more inventive. I wish they'd have done the whole recap like that. That's quite a more interesting approach. Yeah, the idea that you're watching that bit, because that is the part of the ending that feels most like TV news footage.
Mm-hmm.
But also, again, it's telling us this happened, right? This definitely happened.
Right.
It was filmed. It's on it's on TV. It definitely happened. So again, we're delineating what's dream and what's fantasy.
And part of it is it feels so connected to the Halloween movies because you're getting a lot of he's there, he's not there. A lot of
he's stealing clothes,
waist down shots, stepping out once somebody turns their back, all those kind of familiar tropes that we know. And that's why this movie feels like a paint by numbers.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I do think they do well is because you're kind of always waiting. You're like waiting. When is it going to happen? And there are so many false moments that you almost start to relax, and then finally it happens. So I kind of like that. Plus, you got some good fun in there. There's 3D with the snake. No, I like the snake.
I find these two tiresome.
Huh?
I find these two tiresome, though. I find these two very tiresome.
Oh, the couple?
Yeah.
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
A lot of overworked. There's a lot of overworked comedy in this opening.
Oh,
scene,
absolutely.
I don't know why we've shifted to pure slapstick now.
You're gonna get the same thing in 5, and although it's so broad, in 5, it's funnier.
We'll have that discussion when we get there. It's
All right.
they're definitely of kind.
Yeah.
I agree. But you know, the last film got by on a kind of low key jokiness that really helped the movie. But this has just blossomed into full, you know, like full, almost self parodying physical comedy.
Yeah.
It's like a low humor extravaganza. The scene in the toilet
Oh,
with
yeah.
the snake. There's a detail in that scene which is both simultaneously wonderful and terrible. Do you know what I'm talking about? When he's on the toilet.
Is it what are you talking about?
When Harold is on the toilet.
Yeah, no, that I understand, but
Oh, well,
I mean,
there's a detail in the scene simultaneously repulsive and admirable, which is that you can see the shadow of his poop as it goes as it falls into the bowl.
Well, then that I did not notice.
Reflected in the toilet seat as it goes down. So that guy's pooping for real, because you can see the light flicker as his poop goes down. Now, while I admire the technique, I do not admire that. I don't need to see this in my Friday the 13th movie.
No, I'm glad I didn't notice it.
Yeah, and so it is. It's picking up the night of a la Halloween 2. Unfortunately,
Right.
It's not the right date, so the title doesn't work. And you know, they kind of redo the rat scene in part 2, and again, the only difference is 3D.
Yeah.
So now we have it's a mouse instead of a rat, but we have to have it like walk along a plank.
Yeah, more
so
wood.
It can go right into the camera. And then the baseball bat when the baseball bat goes into the close to the camera.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about when it comes to calculated 3D effects, that when you take the 3D away, it just looks like the blocking's gone wrong. It looks like the guy wasn't supposed to put it where he put it.
Yeah, of course.
And obviously he is supposed to put it where he put it, but there's no reason why he should.
But I can tolerate that one, and I can tolerate the rat. Although you can see the snake on the wire, I still think it's a good effect.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny, like, up until this point, it's all been kind of deadpan young people.
Yeah, right.
And this is like a sillier and older demographic that we're dealing with. So there's a distinct attempt here to change the tone and the demographic of the series a little bit. I mean, we'll go back to that demographic soon, but this does seem to be a departure in terms of representation.
Yeah.
So,
but in the end, Vera's going to get it in the neck, and Harold's going to get a hatchet to the head.
Yeah. Takes a long time though. It's only an hour. It's only a 95-minute movie, and this again that you could get.
Yeah, but like I said, I think yeah, absolutely. I think they're trying to stretch this movie in places because they don't want to have an 80-minute movie.
And it's the distinction.
So you get 6 minutes of the last movie in a scene like this. But I also think, like I was saying earlier, I think in Miner's mind, if you put an expectation on the audience and you carry it long enough, you can lull them into, well, maybe it's not coming when I think it's coming, and then try to surprise them. I think that's what he was going for.
Yeah, and that is, at least they do that, because there were later instances in the movie where he it's just a pure prick tease that nothing comes.
Yeah, right.
They build the suspense and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of a cheat at that point. But yeah, at least at this point we do get some kind of a payoff. And I think there is a distinction, because the last movie, Friday the 13th Part 2, also relied heavily on the iconography of Halloween 2. but it did it in a way that didn't just feel like it was playing for time, and that's what it feels
Yeah,
like here. It's
that
like,
yeah.
we've got zero substance. We've got to
Right.
fill this screen
We
time with
exactly.
something. And I never got that feeling in part 2. I felt like, you
Right.
know, we're riffing on lots of different slasher films and prototypical slasher films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Psycho. It felt like much more of a mix, but this feels like, well, let's just begin it the way Halloween 2 did. and
This
pretty much
movie
do the same
does
thing,
feel
but in
like
3D.
Yeah. But it speaks to what we talked about in the ranking episode. You know, it was the actor David Katmus who said, you know, this is crap. What are you guys doing? And it was the producer and Miner that said, oh, no, my friend, this is a Friday the 13th movie, and it's in 3D.
Yeah.
And apparently that was enough for audiences. I tell you what, we've killed off the first 2 victims and talked credits. Why don't we take a break?
Yeah, that's good. We can meet the kids.
We can meet the kids. Yeah. All right. After this.
We'll meet some more thinly veiled stereotypes.
Oh, I'll say. Coming at you right after this.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had 1, maybe 2 craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beers. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the 1982 sequel, Friday the 13th, Part 3, the first movie with the mask, directed by Steve Miner.
Extra subtitle added.
We're not there yet, though. We got to meet the kids as they meet the new crazy Ralph.
That's right.
He's not going to come back, though.
No, he was a one-time deal. He doesn't work outside 3D.
Exactly.
Well, this is where we meet Shelley, which is a reminder that, you know, body fascism cuts both ways. You know, men are subject to you know, idealized sexuality and appearance. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a sharp reminder that men need feminism just as much as women do. The suffering of this guy.
Well, it was funny, too, to listen to the actor Larry Zerner talk about sort of audience reaction to Shelley, and people either love him or hate him, apparently.
When someone says that, it's always more the latter.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say. I'm sure he said that, but I think most people hated Shelley.
Yeah. When someone comes in the room saying you either love me or hate me, that's a clear indication that the latter will be your choice. And we also meet, you know, speaking of stereotypes, Cheech and Chong here in the van.
In the form of a couple.
We got some stoners in the mix. Yeah, they've mixed it up, so it's now Cheech and Chong and now man and woman.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like, you know, you feel like you're having archetypes thrown at you rather than real characters at this point. I guess that maybe that's where the pregnant character comes from. It's just like, it's just the outline of the character.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's possible.
A way of just defining her in broad strokes. going, she's the pregnant one. You know, it's just one. Everyone has like one.
We're not going to mention it more than the
characteristic.
once, but this one's pregnant.
And then we have a kind of Bad News Bears style. Sorry, breaking Bad News Bears in Breaking Training style, because I have yet to see Bad News Bears. Moment. It's the same gag, isn't it? Oh no, because they do get pulled over by the cops in Bad News Bears, but here they just think they're getting pulled over by the cops.
They just think they are, right?
So they eat all the pot.
They eat all their pot.
Yeah. Which is a straight out of a Cheech and Chong movie.
Right.
If not multiple times, but I can recall one specific. I'm sure that's how most of them end up, going down. But I've definitely seen that in a Cheech. So they're, again, they're looking to make broader characters, broader storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Comedy first. Yeah, and then we see the evil eye guy, who's Crazy Ralph as I said in the previous episode, Crazy Ralph for the 3D era, because
right.
he's actually got an eye that you can push into the camera.
So that is an eye. That's what I thought it was. Do they say that it's an eye?
Well, I don't know. How much closer do you need it to be to tell it's an eye? I mean, it really couldn't get any closer to the camera, so.
It doesn't necessarily look like an eye. It's it's elongated and fucked up.
But it's the evil eye because he's got an evil eye, isn't it? Isn't it a call back to Telltale Heart and the man with the evil eye?
Probably.
But he's a crazy. He's a
Steve Miner's a smart guy. That makes sense.
He's a surrogate Crazy Ralph, customized for 3D for a 3D film. Which is in its way upping the ante.
Mm-hmm.
On Crazy Ralph. This is where it's
we got some 1982 shit.
Yes. Very much so.
Where one character is proclaiming there's only so many cold showers I can take.
You're talking about Rick?
Implying, yeah, Rick. Rick's saying, listen, you got to put out or else obviously I'm going to have to stop seeing you.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, he acts like people don't take him seriously because he's from the country. No, it's because you hate women. That's why no one takes you seriously.
A piece of shit.
Yeah. And again, I give them credit for, not having the movie simply be about returning to the camp, because this time they're going to a cabin in the woods, and the next movie is exactly the same setup. So we get two.
That's the
two
one
movies
thing
of
about
cabins
this
in the woods.
series is that you discover as the series goes on that there are houses nearby, there are little, there are stores closer than you thought they were, and then, one ends definitely at the camp, and then definitely in the next movie that we won't even get to until next year, there's definitely houses right next to that camp that you never saw before,
It's like that's why only part 2 reads as a kind of wilderness movie, because after that, it's you realize it's a highly developed suburban area. And I guess Chris's quirk. So we've got one of them's pregnant, two of them are stoners, one of them is the ugly kid, and so
yeah, all right.
Chris's fun fact is that she's suffering from PTSD because she was attacked 2 years ago when she last came to the lake.
Well, we'll get to the story in a bit, but I also wrote down, because after one of Shelley's terrible jokes, one of the first thing he proclaims is that he's an actor, and I wrote down, Shelley's giving bad actors a bad name.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And speaking to what we said about Rick, like, he doesn't he say something along the lines of, "Come on, it's been 2 years."
Yeah, which, I think so.
I'm really underestimating how post-traumatic stress disorder works. You really should be more sympathetic to her triggers, especially when it's the first time she's coming back.
To the spot where she was possibly attacked. Possibly
She
raped.
was, yeah, she was raped in some cuts.
Yes.
Which is another very 1982 thing as well. Like,
Right.
did we have the same thing with Amityville 2, The Possession, where it was like,
Except that was
rape
also
scenes.
incest.
Yeah, there was incest and rape, but they were only sort of talked about and heard in the movie, but
Yeah.
the actual visual version of it was cut out.
Yeah, I think at one point Rick says, he said, "Did I do something wrong?" And I said, "Yes, you did something wrong. You were rapey, you fucking asshole."
That's another along with you either love him or you hate him.
Yeah.
I think coming into a
Yeah.
room going, "Did I do something
something wrong?"
It's never a good way to start when you're building a character. Because it's like, why is this about you suddenly?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we get introduced to the barn
Yes.
and its various Heath Robinson style Rube Goldberg style contraptions. Because we spend a lot of time on that pulley.
Oh, do we ever?
And as I'm watching it, I'm going, like, I've seen about 2 different people go up and down twice.
Swing out and
I'm
back
just
and
like,
forth.
I'll be just like, I would be very surprised if this didn't come back at some point, because we've been here a long time.
In like 10 minutes.
Seeing the intricacies of this mechanism.
In like 10 minutes, Fox from the biker gang is going to be swinging on that thing. And she's supposed to be like covertly trying to steal gas to burn the barn down. She's just making a spectacle.
Yeah.
Just so that we, as the audience, can understand, hey, this is going to come into play.
And we get a more, again, like a fuller, more theatrical version of the prank that we saw in the last movie.
Yeah, right.
Was it Ted with his jumping out in the cannibal
cannibal mask?
Knew what Jason was going to look like. And in this movie, like, Shelby does like a full, kind of bloodletting sort of a maneuver, and then interestingly, that will then be supplanted by the next film where the main character is a burgeoning special effects artist, so he can do all those pranks with the professionalism of Tom Savini.
Because Tom Savini's doing it for him.
I love how we're kind of ramping it up.
We're ramping up to try to tell through the narrative, to give credit through the narrative to the people that they love behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Shelley's joke is going to go over so poorly that he's got to not get out of town, but he's going to go to the store with, who's he go with, Chris?
With the biker gang.
Well, not with the biker gang.
Yeah, he goes with Chris.
But we're going to meet the biker gang. And I remember... I just remember thinking that the biker gang was so heavy in this very small town store. I thought, is this just where they hang out, or did they just happen upon this town and then decide to fuck with Shelley and Chris? Because it felt more like they're the town assholes.
It's very noticeable that the Diegetic Disco soundtrack reemerges at this point, because I feel like the biker gangs are like the content equivalent of the disco soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely.
It just takes it at like what is quite a conventional horror movie into kind of a crazy direction for a little while.
Not for a little while. They're going to be with us till the end.
Yeah, but they're only really going to be. We're supposed to think that they're gone much earlier on than they actually are.
But yeah, it's a good solid 20 minutes.
It's a
good solid 25 minutes with them, yeah.
It's like a caper chase movie for the next 10, 15 minutes. This is also where we get the yo-yo in the lens.
Well, we get the wallet throwing in the lens. We get biker chain in the windshield and the side window.
3D wallets, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the biker gang are they kind of become our fake Jasons. So this is because Jason's sort of absent from this section of the movie, so they're the they're like the sort of
They're Jason surrogates for a
the
while.
B team.
Yeah, right.
They're basic surrogates. Yeah, like they're the threats.
Mm-hmm.
They're the psychopaths.
You're gonna see some legs behind the van, and then and then it'll turn out to be Loco, who's gonna dog bark.
Yeah.
And the dog bark is the signal that we can steal the gas now.
Well, that's it. And at the most basic level, this whole scenario has been written so that they'll steal the fuel from the vehicles, so the kids won't be able to get away.
Leave.
I mean, that's why it's in there. Why that? So they're kind of writing. They're sort of writing back from that, right? Mm-hmm. They're reverse engineering. We've got to find a way for the kids to be stranded.
But they leave out a section because when Shelley and Chris leave them, they've run over at least one of the motorcycles, and they've left them behind, like in their dust. And narratively, 2.5 minutes later, they have all caught up to the bar. They've done quite a bit of detective work to find this place. I don't know how they did it on just 2 bikes with 3 of them when somebody was gone for at least 10 minutes before, they going off into side roads and dirt patches. But this biker gang, they're a regular, Sherlock Holmes as a unit, because they find the house and the barn and steal the gas.
So who's the character? Is it Chris that he goes with? Because
or is it Debbie? Maybe it's Debbie.
It's Debbie.
You're
because
right.
The fun fact about her is she's Latina. Because we see that when she's picked up, her mother's, speaking Spanish, and then she comes out and translates. It's like, oh, they don't want me to go. As if we needed that translated. Like, it's very clear what's going on. And then, of course, when she gets to the store, they're racially profiling her, and they say we don't accept food stamps, and that's directed at her.
Right.
So that's her fun fact: is casual racism follows her around
just wherever she goes. But it's also a white actor playing Debbie.
Is it?
Oh yeah.
You think so?
Tracy Savage?
Yeah, it is. I'm just
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at her picture on IMDb, and that's
quite white.
That's a remarkably white actor. But there's also kind of filmic racism going on here, because part of the setup here is that this is how you have the black person die first in a movie where there's no black people. You just introduce them quickly and have them
die immediately.
Yeah.
Good,
or at least to the best of our knowledge.
Good death though gives us another stick.
Yeah. This is what I described in my notes. The bikers, they are our training wheels.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The movie's training was because they were just kind of working up to the murder of the kids, and they're in the crossfire. Mm-hmm. So this is just a practice round for Jason. And the return of the pitchfork.
Yeah, right.
So, the last remnants. It's really it's really about casting off the country bumpkin version of Jason we saw in the last film and replacing him with this dynamic, possibly Canadian.
I would love one scene where because they never show Shelley dying. But if they showed Shelley dying, and then you hear a muffled voice say, "Nice mask, eh?" And then put the mask on. All of a sudden we know Jason. Oh, he's a hockey fan. He's from Canada. Beauty.
Yeah. Even the clothes that he's stolen make him look more urbane.
Yeah. No, yeah, right.
Because he's in like a windbreaker.
It kind of looks. It looks more clothy than that. It feels more like an army jacket, kind of, or like a heavy wool shirt is what it looks like. Yeah. It's between shirt and jacket.
And we should talk about the key differences, even from the beginning of the film. In the last movie, Jason was still
more childlike.
He was childlike. He had long hair. Mm-hmm. Now he's bald and burly.
Right.
And
it's funny because I don't think...
I wonder what...
I don't think we have any repeat Jasons until we won't even cover them
No,
until next
Kane
year,
Hodder.
till like 7, right?
Yeah. Kane Hodder, I
Yeah.
think, is the first one who does consecutive.
And so every year they're not only are they replacing Jason every movie, sometimes they're replacing him in a particular movie. They do that twice.
Yeah.
Where they hire a Jason and fire
Right.
a Jason and get a new Jason, you know?
Yeah. And in that, absolutely, yeah. So it's.
So you don't have a continuity there. Like you said, we have a burlier Jason now.
You don't, but it's a kind of it's a transition. And part of that, I think, is it doesn't really make sense when you think too much about it, but the idea crossed my mind that because we only see Jason's face in the dream part of the end of the last movie,
Right.
that you can sort of reimagine him however you want because no one has seen him. It doesn't really work because Ginny and Paul have seen him, so Ginny would base the dream version of him
On what
on
she'd
what he
seen.
looked like,
Yeah.
rather than inventing a completely different looking person. So it doesn't quite work, but it's the closest I get in my head canon to reconciling those two
Sure.
Jasons. But filmically, we're being told that his iconography is changing
Mm-hmm.
in the course of this movie very clearly. I think that's very much one of the sub projects of this movie is
Right.
to end with a different Jason than the one we began with. And it's very effective in that because everything we introduce in this movie kind of sticks with how we see Jason from now on.
Sure.
And this is the first time he's really a zombie. I mean,
In quotes.
let's just put aside the whole like drowning in the lake. And
Yeah,
coming back
right.
From that, let's you just have to forget about that.
Right.
But if you forget about that, this is the first time he's been sort of
Reanimated.
resurrected.
Yeah,
from,
right.
Yeah,
From what was
from
supposed
a
to be
version of
death.
Jason we've seen. Yeah. So, and I think that's the formula is is coagulating at this point, and this movie's is bearing a lot of that burden.
You know what I also noticed, and this is a fun fact, because it leads to another series that does have a sequel. But the vest that one of the bikers is wearing, I think his name is Ali.
Yeah.
It's from Any Which Way You Can.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
How great is
at
that?
all. The scenes that they're in could have been straight out of Every Which Way But Loose.
Absolutely.
If you told me that was a deleted scene from Every Which Way But Loose, I would believe you.
If they were to walk around that van to steal the gas, if you heard da-na-na-na-na,
Right turn, Clyde. He just gets punched by an orangutan. Would that really be that out of place in this movie? We've already had a rabbit and a snake
no, I don't think so.
and a mouse. No, I don't think so either. Another crossover with the bikers that's interesting. The I can't remember the name of the character, the bald African American gentleman.
I think that's Ali.
The actor's name is his name. Well, his name is another crossover with him is the actor Nick Savage also plays a running character in Hill Street Blues.
Oh, okay.
There's like a run of episodes where at the beginning of every episode, Mick Belker he's a pickpocket, and Mick Belker arrests him and brings him into the precinct, and does his booking paperwork, and he gives him a fake name every time, and they replay it like at the beginning of every new episode. So that is who that's what you
associate
kind
it
of
with.
It's kind of like a kind of Hill Street Blues version of that con man in Cheers. Is it Harry?
That's
the Hat?
Harry the Hat. Yeah, that's Harry Anderson.
Yeah, Harry. It's the same. It's essentially the same gag. Like he gets one over on.
Where
them every
his
single
work was
time.
so good, they were like, "Let's give that guy a sitcom." So they got Night Court.
Did they do it? Oh, he's in Night Court as well.
Yeah, that's Harry Anderson is like a well-known stand-up.
Oh,
and-
but not the same character.
No, not the same character. No. But just
Okay,
his
that's
work
what I
in
thought you were
Cheers was
saying.
so good that they were like, we should give this guy a show.
Yeah.
So they did.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that. But I kind of tantalized by the prospect of a Harry the Hat spin-off as well.
Right.
That would have been in a Beverly Hills Bunt style.
Well, I think we're at
with
least
our old friend Dennis Franz.
at least in my notes, we're at the part where where Chris is gonna tell her story.
So yeah, I've got I thought for all the overworked comedy in the film, it's very funny that the next time you see the stoners, they're just asleep on the couch.
Right.
Like, I think that's a nice kind of comedic touch.
Oh,
And
I mean,
again,
I guess
just
we
really
talked
like,
about the pitchfork for Fox, but the other bikers, I think not only is Fox nailed with a pitchfork, there's a second pitchfork for Loco, if memory serves.
Yeah.
And I do really
Probably,
like that
yeah.
shot for Ali when because he's laying down on the hay, but his head is behind the stall, and you see the kind of the thump, it feels kind of psycho-ish, but he's getting one of the many sticks in this movie to the head.
Yes. And I guess I do have mixed feelings about Shelley, because part of me thinks, there've been enough ugly girls in Hollywood movies up to this point that it's time to redress the balance and, have a man take the heat for once.
Sure.
But I don't want anyone to have to experience this kind of abuse in a movie.
I know.
It's just,
I understand.
So it kind of works against itself in some respects.
I still like the story, though.
no,
This guy was just handing out flyers in Westwood by UCLA, and somebody said,
the real actor?
Yeah,
Okay.
and somebody said, "Hey, are you an actual actor?" And he said, "Yes." And they were like, "You're Shelley, like you are so Shelley." Just taking one look at him, so that look got him his job. So,
Right.
kudos, I say.
Well, it's like, again, going back to Bad News Bears, where the fat kid got thin, and then they had to find a new fat kid.
Yeah, that's a real bummer.
Yeah.
Worked for Larry Zerner, though.
But it's I had this as an actor as well. Like, people say, oh, they seek you out for something. Say, oh, you're going to be perfect. And then you read the script, and it's just like a horrible, slobby, schlubby piece of shit walks into a bar and just like, really? You see me in this? Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I like how the flashback is executed with the present day superimposed on the.
So you
on the
do
memory
like
of
that?
the past.
Because I have a sense that that's kind of derided a little bit.
But isn't it more this, like, that people thought that it was going too why you draw the line here particularly, but people thought it was going too far that Jason kind of raped her,
Well, maybe that was it.
and that they had that footage, and then they had to kind of
They
had
didn't have
cut
to.
out
They
the
made a
implications.
choice. So you're hearing the story
I think
and
they were
seeing
they
the
had a
story.
lot of heat from the censors, though.
Okay.
They had a lot of heat from the censors.
Okay.
I think, though.
I always thought that I had.
But
I
yeah,
guess.
oh, yeah,
I
that's
guess in my critic canon, I thought I remembered a lot of. Why are you showing us a character, telling us a story, and at the same time showing us the story?
Yeah,
But I
except
think
that-
it kind of works in an almost
I think it
an
works
almost
too. I think it's just
melodramatic
a
way. You know?
Well, I think you haven't seen it before or since, and maybe there's good reasons for that. Maybe what you just pointed out is the conclusion most people come to. But I like the fact that it's a different way of doing it. I
Yeah.
don't want flashbacks to be the same every time I see them.
Right.
I don't want to have them at all. But if you're gonna have them, they should at least shouldn't disrupt the flow of the present day storytelling, which I think is what they're trying to do here. Another good use of the stoners with one of the pot paranoid. The male stoners going around, and he's both paranoid because of all the pot he smoked, and he's quite legitimately paranoid that he's gonna go to the toilet and then Shelley's gonna open the door and people are gonna see him on the shitter. So I think both of those things are very funny ideas, and the actor does really well. Kind of like the stoners are working out well at this point. I had initial misgivings, but they're starting to come into fruition.
Yeah, I think so.
But another toilet scene again. Like, think of something else. It's like they want to have toilets and shit in the movie.
Purposefully, yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah. And it's just so funny that we've gone. We covered on the Patreon. We covered Psycho, which had the first shot of a toilet in a mainstream
Right.
Hollywood film. And flash forward to 1982, and we're
You can watch Shadows of Poop
going down. We've come too far too quickly.
I mean, just more than a decade later.
I'd really have liked to have seen this movie. It was the year I was born, so there's no historical way I could. But I'd love to have seen this movie when it first came out in theaters, because now when I see a character pulling a prank with a hockey mask on, I feel like they're doing an impersonation of Jason. But the concept of Jason in a hockey mask doesn't exist yet.
Not till this movie.
Adjust.
Yeah, right.
So I'd have loved to have seen that all organically happen, where he kind of picks up the hockey mask and it becomes part of his look organically and not.
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking back through the other films.
Right now we're at another Shelley fake attack, but
yes,
he comes from under the dock with a wetsuit and a harpoon and then the mask. And I just love the idea that this is at least his second mask, in addition to a wig piece with blood on it. He's got
that box.
Yeah, he's got fake.
And
at one point, somebody says, "What's in this box?" And he says, "Never fucking mind your business." But I just love that. I just like the idea of Shelley packing for the weekend, and he says, "Wetsuit, yes. Harpoon, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hockey mask, might not need it, but just in case." It's great.
Absolutely, yeah. And does the movie go into slow motion when Vera opens Shelley's wallet? I can't quite decide if it did or if it was a 3D effect gone wrong.
Oh.
And that's the problem with this movie. I don't know. I don't always know what I'm watching.
I guess I never worried about it because
of
the best piece of 3D is coming up.
The spear in the eye, yeah, absolutely.
It's so good.
Yeah, and it's another kind of spear penetration kill, and we're on at least our third of those, and we'll have one more before the movie is over.
Oh yeah,
and we pipped Jaws 3D to the post 1 year before that film came out. And this, when you see Jason,
but let's not forget, this is also the first sighting of Jason in the mask when he kills her with the harpoon.
Yeah. And he looks like a man for the first time, right? Like he's no longer the overgrown boy. This is the beginning of the bodybuilder Jason.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? This is that will eventually morph into the excesses of Kane Hodder.
This is the Jason that can walk through doors.
Yeah, this is the great horror-based comedy drag act Cinebra. Who were at the San Diego International Fringe Festival a few years ago. This is similar to when they talked about there being a gym under the lake in which Jason was working out in. It's the only explanation.
It's where he works on his
so
muscles
so
and holding his breath, which we know he can do quite well.
Yeah.
Well, we just killed Vera. She's harpooned to death. Should we take another break and come back?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
all right.
And we'll talk about how instantly tiresome Andy walking on his hands.
Yeah, I'll say. By the time he gets split in half, you're ready for him to get split in half.
I got no sympathy for any of them. That might be the problem.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, we'll get to that when we get back, right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2A Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2A Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here. We're finishing up with Friday the 13th, Part 3. Jason finally has his mask, so he's going to start killing hot and heavy.
Well, yeah, that's the other great thing about the hockey mask. Not only does the iconography stick this time, but you can now have Jason on screen more without him, with the actor being able to see what they're doing, and without it looking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's win-win. You can have him on screen for extended periods of time because of the hockey mask. So it solves a lot of problems.
Agreed.
It's a one-size-fits-all solution to all the iconographic problems, yeah.
Let me ask you this. The second Shelley shows up and does his first joke, you know what's going to be involved with his death, don't you?
Yeah. And I feel like, again, that was more of a subtext in the last film, the kind of boy who cried wolf, whereas in this one...
Yeah, right.
It's just reading out the fairy tale
out loud.
Yeah, absolutely, and it kind of kills what potentially could be a quite interesting moment. I think that it's been established so clumsily.
Well, on our way out, you were talking about how tedious and how quickly I think it's Andy can get walking on his hands around the fucking house.
Yeah,
and you're right. But I'll tell you one thing that I respect about the movie: Andy's death involves Jason hiding by a bookshelf or something, I think. And as Andy misses him,
when serial killers are sneaky.
Of course.
But you're so drawn to it. I wonder where it comes from. Because you always find these moments of where they're being surreptitious.
Yeah. Well, the one thing we talked at length in the last movie about Steve Miner and all the work he did. And we agree this is a lesser movie, but you can see some of his command still at play here. And one thing I really like about this movie is when Jason splits Andy in half, you get maybe a half a second shot of what is clearly a clear plexiglass floor that Andy is standing on, that Jason's going to go through him and the blood's going to splatter. And you get that. Maybe that is a blood splatter 3D. I was assuming no, because it kind of stops on the glass itself. I don't know if they did that or not, but just to build all of that for a half a second, and I think they probably wanted more. There's, throughout all of these movies, you get, how many times they were going to get an X rating and what they had to keep trimming and trimming and trimming, and it seemed like this movie is not allowed to get away with things that. I mean, you get away in television now with, The Walking Dead and shows like that. And this poor series was getting the shaft from the MPAA.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I love that they go to the lengths to get that 1/2 second of a shot and build the floor out like that. I think it speaks well of the movie and Steve Miner.
Yeah, and it's a minor tragedy that I don't want to dwell on, because I don't think it mutes my appreciation for the films as a whole, but we are watching the incomplete versions of all these movies because the filmmakers planned some sequences to be far longer and more involved and visual than they actually were. But I think it's to these movies' credit that what's left is still works in its own right, and you don't miss those scenes. but when you, I think Greg Nicotero talks about it, like, because Steve Miner, I think, or Joseph Zito maybe, or I can't remember which movie it was, but they screened the, it was for part 2, so it would have been Steve Miner. They screened the extended version of one of the kills, and he was like, "Nah, I just can't unsee it. Like, I miss it every time I see the movie." But
yeah, right.
if you never get the experience of having watched it, you still just think that
then you can't miss it.
These films still work. They're accomplished. Again, best left unsolved in the Spinal Tap sense. That's my new too much fucking perspective is
yeah,
best left unsolved.
Well, I think for a certain sect of audience members, this is not what I go to these movies for, but I think there are certain people that go to see what's going to be the new kill.
I agree.
I think I think you get that in this movie. I like the red hot poker kills; those are fun.
I like that there are other pleasures, and I don't think that having those moments in the movie would detract from the movie, but because they're not there, there's other aspects of the filmmaking to be drawn to, like the use of the camera in 2, like the amazing screenplay of 6, like the kind of the quirky tone of 4, which is just its own animal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would diminish if you had access to the full versions of them, but like it reminds you that there's more going on than just the kills and just the execution of the kills,
right?
Or the killing of the executions, however you want to put it.
Well, you got plenty of kills here,
Yeah, we got slicing Andy's nads.
Right, Debbie's gonna get neck stabbed.
Right.
We're going to get some 3D popcorn.
Yeah, well, we've got a tribute to a double tribute to Tom Savini, where
because she's reading a magazine.
She's reading Fangoria. Yeah, so
Fangoria, yeah.
I like that the silliness of the sequel comes with some acknowledgement of the fan community that kind of helps propagate the series.
Right.
And the love letter to Tom Savini. He's not the makeup artist on this film, but the kill that follows her reading the magazine is obviously a tribute to what he did with Kevin Bacon.
To what he did in the first movie with Kevin Bacon.
Which we've already had a tribute to in the previous movie.
Right.
I think this time, we're doing that sort of that kind of part 3 looping back to the original, because I think it's back in the original coming up through the... Well,
I was going to say it's an inversion, because this one, for one, there's 2 people instead of 1. And second, Jason's above them instead of below them. And so in the first movie, it's a knife. In this one, it's a spear. And the spear is going to go through both and hit the floor as opposed to coming out through the neck.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's very much, Tom Savini's greatest hits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Done in a very, in an extremely kind of.
You can tell that there's a bit of this movie that's like, well, we know how to do this, so we could just do it a little different.
And maybe some sense of trying to woo Tom Savini back into the frame. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
by putting his headshot on the screen. And then we get into the stoner making with the popcorn death. And again, it lends itself to the 3D effect, but it's organic enough because you stoners, they love their munchies.
Oh, they got to get their munchies.
If you've watched any movie about stoners,
yeah,
it's interesting because this is one of the points of contrast with the next film. Like this is the Cheech and Chong version of the stoner, where I feel like the stoner in the next film, probably assisted by the fact he's actually high while he's performing, is like every real stoner I've ever known. There's no cliche or convention about him. Like there's nothing about his. We'll talk about it in the next film. Nothing in the behavior.
We'll get there. Yeah.
In the next film is quantifiable. Like you could never turn it into a convention or a trope. But every time I see it, I think, well, first of all,
that guy's stoned.
That guy's stoned, and also he's doing a really good job of capturing what being stoned is.
Right.
Or being around stoners is like, yeah.
Well, basically, we've got all these deaths, and then Chris and Rick come home.
Mm-hmm. Also, something that happens here, which again, like when you know that that you're getting far into a horror film series, electrocution. I
Hmm.
feel like when you start to see electrocution, you know you're in
Right. Yeah.
about at least part three, maybe even part four. I think it's part four where we get electrocution in Halloween. That's our first big
Yeah.
electrocution scene. So you know you're far along enough that you
Bucky.
yeah, exactly.
Bu- yeah, Bucky.
I think there's a sense of, well, the next, you know what we got to do next. We're gonna have to go to the electrocution.
Gonna have to. Yeah. We're not to the flares yet.
And I love how having just kind of shat on how cliched the stoners are here. I do think there are some nice touches. I love how slow the stoner girl's moving when she's being stalked, when she's like
Right.
trying to find out what's going on, because it's taken that horror movie cliche of like, just get out of there, run away, and added
Amplifying it.
how
Yeah.
stoners like physically can't move very fast to it. Again, and this movie does have, I think I feel better having gone through this, talked about it. There were enough outstanding moments in this film to call it a good
Yeah,
movie.
I'm starting to realize that too. That as I go through my notes and the things I'm talking about, I keep saying, "Well, I like this. I really like this. Is done well." You know.
Because this is the beginning of the eye popping scene, but I think it's already an interesting scene. The idea of Rick being gagged as Debbie calls out for him.
So yeah, I mean that part of it I like, but I also like the idea that it's kind of an inversion, at least from the last movie, because maybe he doesn't last all the way to the end, but he disappears for a while, but the hero is with boyfriend in the last movie, and so you think that might happen
If the
again,
ending
and they
weren't a
get rid of
dream,
him
you'd be
quick.
absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the eye popping is very silly.
He
but...
arrives before the dream, though.
Yeah, he does.
He arrives in the shack.
Because he has that non-specific look of disgust at Jason, but which makes it even more. But it makes it even more of a mystery of where he ended up.
Right.
Unless he's in that elderly after hours joint with Ted.
But if there's ever anything that I would have made, I think in 1982 a crowd cheer more than this eye popping out, I can't think of what it would be. They must have gone fucking ape shit for that.
Yeah, there's some parts of this movie where they lean into the silliness and it's just tiresome. And then there are other moments like this where they kind of take it to a theatrical extreme that's quite charming and admirable. And this is one of those moments, like the eye popping ad. It's a, like, technically it's a very good effect, but there's not the sense that they're trying to make it look real. They just want it to look spectacular.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And harness the 3D. This is not like,
Right.
we're not going for graphic realism here. We want it to look and seem silly, and it really.
We just want to wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what I don't like in any horror movies.
Oh God.
When
people smashing through windows. I hope you.
I'm okay. No, I'm okay with that.
Because there's a lot of that.
Listen, if I see water coming down the stairs, I'm gonna freak, and so I'm gonna run upstairs. And even if it's filled with blood, I will be more focused on getting the water to stop than on the blood. And just letting it keep going to me is insane. I just can't imagine it. I'm going to pull the drain and stop the water. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's the idea that you're not thinking straight in that moment.
I disagree.
I half buy it. There are less plausible things happening in this movie. Because another trope is
before we get Rick through the window, I made a note that said we got a lot of doors and windows closing here.
Yeah,
we're following her for a while. I feel like we're stretching it to the 92 minutes.
Yeah, and we're also the kind of trope which they managed to keep in check, at least in the last movie, of corpses of people that you didn't know or didn't know were dead just appearing suddenly. Like this is something that all of these movies do to some extent, but this is just a real explosion of that. Like every door they open, every like cupboard, they look at, there's a dead person in there.
Right, yeah.
So it's kind of taken to the nth degree.
Well, it again, it feels, it's one of those things where it feels borrowed again from Halloween, the original Halloween, when she goes upstairs.
You're right. They do it in and again, it was. I'm pretty sure it's in Friday the 13th OG as well. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think that was another aspect that they lifted, and I think we saw more of it in part 2. But this feels just out of control.
I tell you what I do like, because we know that the bikers have stolen the gas, and when you get Chris running away and getting into the van, you have knowledge that she doesn't, but the van starts. And so they avoid a trope immediately by having the van start easily and her driving away. And once it gets onto the bridge, then it's gone. There's enough gas in the tank to start it. I really like that.
And we also know that bridge is broken. So it's
exactly.
You're playing off both in your mind. You're going, oh, I guess there's enough fuel in there, but oh no, there's the broken bridge. She's not gonna get past that.
Right.
But then they flip it on you, and it's like, oh, there's no fuel, and the bridge is broken.
You're double fucked.
You're double fucked. My favorite kind of Oreo. Yeah, rig through the window is the kind of series convention of waiting till the last possible moment before you have a sudden moment of action. Quite well executed. I think, again, the timing on that is...
There's so much window play in these movies.
Yeah, it's like...
He's always throwing somebody through a window or jumping through a window himself.
There's a great moment...
Or throwing someone out a window.
Right, or someone just throwing themselves out of the window.
That's true. We'll get there.
Yeah, I know.
Great stunts.
That's I think that's one of the best moments in the next film, when someone just like, well, if everyone's coming in through the window,
fuck this.
I'm going out through the window. Why has no one thought of this? There's a big open window here.
I'll take my chances with the shards of glass, thank you.
I just love the idea of, it's like someone throwing in a brick and then immediately throwing it out and hitting the person who threw it.
Yeah.
I think when Jason's trying to get through the door and he's using the knife to get in, I feel like this is a shout out to The Shining, which would have been a fairly recent horror phenomenon at the time. I feel like that's like a zeitgeisty call out to The Shining. I know it wasn't popular at the time, but it feels like hardcore horror fans would probably get it. And in these scenes, Jason's not yet supernatural, but he's starting to show signs of superhuman behavior because he shakes off fatal injuries in seconds. So again, they're going as close to the line of zombie as they can without ever going over that line. Yet.
I would suggest that maybe they are going over that line. I don't know.
Yeah, but they're not saying it.
In the last movie, he got macheted in the neck and shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's...
well past the bone.
Yeah, he's not... But what's kind of... I like the distinction here, though, because it helps... It makes it much more interesting to watch the fights he has with people, because I like that he's not unbeatable or unkillable. He's just relentless. And it's a much more interesting dynamic than... Because you're just watching it going, well, there are no stakes here, because, if he's unkillable, no one can do anything to him. And they figure out the workaround for that in part 6 with the occult book. But since they haven't gone full zombie at this point, it still feels like he's beatable. If you find that, if you pick your moment, you can get him on the ropes. But he's gonna be relentless, and he's just gonna keep coming at you. And I think it just makes it a more interesting watch than, if they'd have outright said,
I'll go with you on that.
Said, he's a big ghost. It wouldn't have been as interesting at this point.
I'm trying to think back too, because Chris, we don't have a lot of information on her like we do with Ginny in the last movie about, we don't have her playing chess. We don't have her,
Well, everyone's only got
musing
one thing
about
them.
Jason.
Anyone's only got one
Right,
thing about
yeah,
them.
exactly.
They're limited to one piece of information.
Hers is trauma, though.
Hers is PTSD, yeah. Which,
But what I do like the idea when he smashes, when he comes in through the window.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what she's doing with her window down, but
Yeah.
when he comes in through the window, I just like watching people figure shit out. And I love watching her roll the window up and just keep, snagging his head inside the window. Fuck you, I'm out of here. Or not his head, but his hands. And then he smashes it with... I like Jason figuring that out and just smashing the window with his hockey mask.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck, good thing I got this mask, eh? I can break the window.
I feel like I should get you that DIY Batman book for Christmas. That book that tells you how you can like physically, technically become Batman. I feel like that'd be right up your alley. So Ali is both. He returns from the dead.
Yes.
And
he might be a zombie himself.
He might be a zombie himself. He's also a born-again zombie because he's trying to help and save people, which he had no interest in previously.
He didn't care about it all. He really wanted to harm them before.
And now he's again the sort of the undercurrent of casual racism, because it's sort of like he's just there to come back to life and save some white people before he eventually gets killed anyway.
Yeah.
So he's doing the Paul Winfield, I died so that the white man could live.
Yeah.
Turn.
Right. So Michael Biehn can go on.
And then Jason's reaching out into the camera. That is the...
Yeah.
That's... I don't... It's possibly the first time the 3D is being used for horror purposes. And... it's ironic.
Maybe not the first time, but the best time. Like, that's the time that makes the most sense.
And it's also ironic because Jason is the victim here. He's kind of like... he's reaching out for help. So he's no longer the perpetrator, he's the victim. So it's a nice twist on the archetype that he represents.
I guess you could say that, but...
yeah.
Reap what you sow, Jason.
Yeah. And of course, the pulley is his gallows. We knew it was going to be used for something significant, but
yeah, of course.
And here it is.
But what I do like is when she hangs him outside, and when she comes back, and he just sort of takes the mask off, and it's like, surprise, boogie woogie woogie.
Yeah, they couldn't think of a more organic way. Like he sort of it's the idea that I can't get out of this noose until I take my mask off.
Yeah, right. I guess.
Doesn't really make sense. That he's alive at all.
Not.
But yeah, but certainly that he needs to take them. So it's very inorganic. So we can see his face. It reminds me of that Wallace and Gromit short film, The Wrong Trousers, with a penguin who's actually like a famous criminal, but he puts like a red glove on his head so everyone thinks he's a chicken. And when he reveals his secret identity, he just puts the glove on his head, and Wallace is like, oh, "It's you!" And this is how like, what did you think? Like, that's what kind of a reveal moment is this?
Right. Like she couldn't have intuited that this was the guy who attacked her 2 months ago or 2 years ago or however long ago it was.
Yeah.
I like that look of surprise. Like you said, you? Oh no.
And his... Right, exactly.
In another cut of this movie, you raped me.
But it's clear that the assailant, the person who attacked her was Jason, which I think fucks with the timeline even more than we have already. But anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
So it doesn't bear too much thinking about. And, we're more proof that the third film always returns to the original because we're back on a boat.
Yeah, right.
A self-conscious reenactment of the original ending with pretty much the same music.
I wrote down "woman gets into canoe again." Stop doing that.
Yeah, it's like come and take a boat ride onto Jump Scare Lake.
Yeah.
But it's an inversion as well of the original because
Right.
all was peaceful and the jump was unexpected, and the opposite happens here.
Yeah.
And also it flips.
We get mom.
It flips the role because it's the mother coming out of the water and Jason's on the shore. He banging on that window.
Yeah,
thing.
first we get Jason in the window up there. I kind of like that. The long shot he creates with that.
It's a little unintentionally comic. I always think when we.
I do too, but for some reason I still kind of like it. Part of it is because he still has, he still has that goofy look on his face, like surprise, it's me,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly.
And it should not be a surprise.
Yeah.
But again, we know that this is all a dream because when we wake up, Jason's going to be in the barn. He still has the axe in his head.
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to once again be the last Friday the 13th. We're going to be done with it.
But I hate to spoil this for you, but it has to be real. This is the one time that it has to be real. Because she doesn't know the Jason story. So there's no way she would dream any of the stuff with his mother. The connection with the lake.
Oh, yeah, right.
So this has to be real. Because she couldn't...
Well, then how do you explain...
This time it really happens.
The second half of it.
This time it really happens.
She's not wet.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Because the mother's not really coming out of the lake. But it can't be a dream. Yeah. Contradicting themselves on this point.
You're saying it can't be a dream. I don't think the movie is saying that it can't be a dream, of course.
But if you think about it, there's no... At no point in the movie do they say there is this legend of Jason, which is why that's such a good plot device in the last movie.
And with the timeline thing you were talking about, we know that there's a 5-year jump from 1 to 2. And if he attacked her 2 years ago, that means between the first movie and year 3, 2 years before Friday the 13th Part 2, he attacked Chris in the woods.
Yeah.
So he's been running around those woods. He got out of the water some time ago, I guess.
That's, again, there's just no way of putting it all in a rational timeline. And not only does this movie end in exactly the same way as the original, it ends in exactly the same way as the last movie. With a traumatized final girl being taken away by the cops.
Yelling and screaming.
Well, but the distinction between it's safe to say that Ginny's version of trauma was far more nuanced than the actress playing Chris here.
Yeah.
Because she's doing full-on Jack Nicholson Joker in the back of that car. And
I think it's even more cartoonish than it may as well be the end of a Bugs Bunny cartoon, where they go
maybe again she was inspired by Jack Nicholson in The Shining, Give me the bat, give me the bat, give me the bat, give me the bat. And so Jason's corpse is back in the lake. Is that what the movie?
It's in the barn. It's in the barn.
So why do we have that zoom in on the lake?
I don't know.
Where nothing happens.
But he's in the barn.
Because we hold on the lake and then absolutely nothing happens.
Right.
Which I guess is a callback to the Voorhees head, where the Mrs. Voorhees head, where absolutely nothing happens when you think it's going to.
Yeah. I think it's intended to build or say to the audience, what do you think's underneath there? I mean, we just showed you something that's probably underneath there, but what do you think is underneath there?
But did they say at the end of this film, before we get into the next one, does anyone say anything to the effect of Jason's dead in the barn? Does anyone say that?
Well, you see him in the barn. You actually see him in the barn.
But you also see him
the next movie opens with him
banging on the window. I know, but in this movie...
but...
That's what I'm trying to figure out,
But after the banging in the window, you see him in the barn again.
Right. But what are you supposed to think about that shot of the lake? Is it just pure fake out?
Yeah, I took it...
Or are you supposed to think he's under there? He's gone back in the lake.
Not him. I don't think it's him. I think it's what is under there. Is Mom really under there?
That's
how I take it.
In a very damp sweater.
Yes. Just waiting.
Yeah. That's the end of the movie. So, yeah, again, like the rest of the movie, the ending wants to have it all. Like, it wants to sort of run all three movies consecutively at the same time. And it's less satisfying than I think both the previous endings.
Oh, definitely, yeah. This movie just isn't quite as sure-footed as 1 and 2 are.
No, I think so, and I think that broadness always hangs over it. Like it's always going for the easy laugh. It's going for the obvious joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's going for the broadest possible stereotype of people, rather than trying to flesh out characters. Which again, like on both sides of this movie, both 2 and 4 are doing really well in terms of individualizing characters. When even though those characters are part of a set formula, you still feel like they're individualized within that. In 2 and 4, and here, it just feels like a bunch of stereotypes at the lake.
Mm-hmm. Well, credit check.
Very brief credit check here.
Okay.
Special appearances by the cast members of the last movie, including Betsy Palmer, who was grandmothered in. Wasn't she? Because she's there by virtue of her having returned for the second movie. That she's in this movie by virtue of her returning for the second movie.
Right.
So this is the first
But it's not her coming out of the lake, I'll tell you that much.
No, they got a different actress to do that.
Yeah.
She's there because they reused her footage from the last film, which I think is hilarious. Not only doesn't it's like you could have her in the movie without her coming in and filming anything, because she's already done that in the previous movie, and we're going to re-show that in this movie. And then my only other credit check note, this is a fairly dry set of credits, insert car driver. And I'm wondering, because these films were made so quickly, did someone accidentally put a placeholder name in the credits? Or is this a particular type of stunt driver? Like when you see when you see an insert of a car, it's this guy. Or is it just like insert car driver here? Oh, we forgot to put that in the credits.
Did they really just use a dummy? Like one of those crash test dummies, maybe?
Well, no. I mean, the person is credited. So, yeah, insert... I don't know. I've never heard this term before, and it made me chuckle.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D. You're going to have to tell us what you think. This is towards the bottom of our lists, but, we both called it a good movie.
Yeah, it's competently made, and it has its moments.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good movie to me.
Agreed.
And the older I get, the more I feel like that. The more I'm willing to settle for that kind of a movie, I think.
Well, you're going to have to tell us what you think. Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, and send a letter to Elon Musk to fuck off. Send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. His name is Tom Stewart. He's from Lonesome Whistle Productions. My name is Michael Schatz. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next time, we're getting Tom's favorite.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. Nowhere near the final chapter.
And only my favorite film of the series so far, by a hair.
Barely. All right, look forward to that. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
Sounds disgusting. Let's go. If the idea was to get the audience horny for all the sex lines, dialogue like this
mission accomplished.
No, dialogue like this really kills the mood, I think.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll be back.